And welcome to the August meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission. I'm Gary Litter, Chair of the HCC. I would like to introduce the commission. To my left is Jeff Long, our Historic Officer and Registered Architect. Also with us to my left is Craig Evans, resident of the district, Roger Hudak, a resident of the district, and to my right is Mike Simonson, Chief Building Inspector. I will read ordinance information. It is the purpose and intent of the City of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings and areas of historic interest or importance within the city which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is the applicants will be taken in order. After identifying the project, address, and the presenters, our historic officer will provide a background on the building and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. The board will then address the project, allow public comment, and ultimately create a motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, table the project with clear recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For public comment, there is a 3-minute time limit, and comments must be specific to attributes of the building only. Speakers are to announce themselves with their name and address before speaking. The HCC is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin your project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. If any commission member has a conflict of interest with any of the applications on tonight's agenda, please come forth at this time. Any conflicts? Good. Okay. I will ask that when we call your name on the agenda, please come to the desk here and sign in. And with that, we will go to our first agenda item, which is 375 13th Avenue. Is the applicant here? Looks like it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just checking your eyes. I want to make sure you're paying attention.
Oh, please, you're welcome to sit at the table. That's the idea.
Pardon me?
Yeah. Oh, you're both welcome to sit at
Yeah,
the table.
yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
And welcome.
Hello. My name is Dan Shushinsky. I'm the owner of D&S Contracting. I'm here because I want to replace the roof on 375 13th Avenue with slate line shingles.
Excuse me, Dan. Just to announce your name is enough, and then Jeff, our historic officer, will give the summary.
Okay, go ahead.
If you could just please make sure to sign in and print so I can read your name. That's for the minutes, please. Thank you. This structure is a 2.5 stories, 6-bay, detached frame dwelling with clapboard siding, double hung windows with shutters, roof dormers, a side sun porch, and a rear L addition. The house dates from circa 1910 and is colonial revival in style. In early 2011, HCC adopted the proposal that the City Council issue a certificate of appropriateness to construct a new rear addition with clapboard siding and casement windows. Proposed alterations, the applicant proposes to replace the existing 3-tab asphalt shingle roofing with GAF slate line antique slate asphalt shingles. The guideline citations I used for my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9. I'll read it. The new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy the historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The work shall be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, as well as massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. I also referenced the Bethlehem Ordinance that Mr. Lader quoted at the beginning of tonight's meeting. My evaluation, the effects on the district, and recommendations. The certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to remove the existing 3-tab asphalt shingles and replace them with GAF slate line antique slate asphalt shingles. The proposed replacement roofing is appropriate pending confirmation of a few details. It states the new sheathing is GIF slate line. They have a photograph where they label it as architectural shingle. And I'm stressing this is non-architectural shingle. The architectural, if you remember, are very irregular. So that must have been some kind of copy paste error. I just want to make sure we're dealing with the non-architectural asphalt shingles.
Mhm.
The antique slate is a color when you go to the GIF website. So that's the color which we've approved in the past. And there's no real detail beyond that. So we just need to understand about what roof landscapes are being sheathed. During the removal of any roofing, we want to make sure any damaged wood is replaced in kind. If there's a new ice and water shield to be installed in the valleys and the gutter edges, and new underlayment over the decking and all remaining areas. I didn't see any mention of a ridge vent detail, so I don't know what they're proposing, if anything, but this commission has always requested that detail to be integrated to ensure longevity of the product. This commission always requests all step flashing to be copper. I didn't see any mention of any material for flashing as needed. I think there's a couple of situations where there might be some flashing needed. It's very important all valleys, including at the roof dormers, are to be open, lined with copper flashing. Again, there's no mention of that detail. They could be planning that. It's possible. I just don't know. We want to assure that they don't do woven shingles. And then any kind of metal drip edges are to be painted to match the trim. In addition, I really, for the resulting certificate, we need to know which landscapes. The house has several different portions. As I mentioned, it's the main house. There's a rear L, there's a sun porch, and then a rear addition. The proposal doesn't clarify, and perhaps it's all of them, perhaps it's just the main house. I don't know, but for the resolution, it's very important to have that definition. And also just doing a drive-by, I didn't know if the cheeks of the dormers are going to be treated in any way. So if they could please clarify what's the plan is for the sides of the dormers. There's also no mention of gutters and downspouts. It's fine if they're salvaging and rehanging the existing. It's not a problem. That also should go in the resolution. If there's an intention to replace them, then this commission always requests that new gutters are half round smooth and all downspouts are round smooth.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And Dan, if you could just fill us in on that information.
Okay, the gutters are box gutters. The gutters are box gutters,
Okay.
and I'm going to be putting rubber on them inside. You can't see them from the street or anything. They're hidden right now.
Okay,
They're not in very good shape, but they're good enough shape to put rubber inside of them.
like
The-
an EPDM kind of thing.
What's that?
Like a EPDM kind
Yes,
of thing?
Carlisle EPDM. Yes, 60 mil. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. It's 4,500 reinforced. I'm putting inside the box cutters. That's what it is.
All right. Keep going.
Okay, and on the sides of the dormers, I am using the old flashing that's up inside the siding and adding to it whatever I need to add to the flashing that's there if there's something to be needed. Right now, it is a 3-tab shingle. It has flashing that goes behind it. I will put ice and water shield underneath the step flashing, ice and water shield in my valleys, ice and water shield against the chimneys. The thing that you were talking about with the valleys, I'm closing the valleys. I'm putting ice there. There's metal in them. I'm putting ice and water shield in them and closing the valleys. They weren't open before. There's no need to replace the metal that's in there. There's nothing wrong with the metal that's in there. But you really can't see the valleys much at all. I mean, I know what you're talking about with an open valley, but I wasn't submitting to do that at all. I've been closing them and not weaving them, just closing them.
Is this the entire roof throughout the entire house?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And also on the main ridge, I would be putting ventilation. I'd be putting what they call snow country, plastic venting, and then capping over top of that. Ridge.
So Snow Country sounds like it must be a brand name? Is it-
Snow Country is a 4-foot section of capping it's a much more durable. It's not the stuff that just presses down. It's very breathable. in
Oh,
other
okay,
words.
but it's just, it's a kind of
Yeah,
ridge
it's a
vent?
brand, GAF brand.
Okay, it's a ridge vent
Yes,
essentially.
it's what
Okay.
they want
Okay.
to assure their product.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I just have a question about uh, reconciling the open versus closed valleys. We have in the past dealt with that because the valleys were being replaced, and so we had a reason to do that. If you are not replacing the valleys, but covering over them with the ice and water shield and then enclosing the shingles to that, I think I'm okay with that.
Okay, so you're okay closing over the valleys with?
Yeah,
with the-
especially since it's not taking the old valleys out.
Okay. Mike, any questions?
So there's going to be any of the flashing that you're going to add is going to be copper if you do have
No,
to add
I'm
it?
not using copper. What's in there is galvanized right now. There's nothing wrong. It's not rusted. There's nothing wrong with the valley. And if there is anything wrong with it, I would replace it. There's no copper anywhere else on the whole job. So I wouldn't be putting copper in.
Okay.
What about at places like chimneys or you?
The chimney, I would replace any step flashing and fix any counter flashing that needs to be fixed around the chimney areas. There's two main chimneys on the sides. Well, right now there is aluminum on it. I'm just putting the step flashing that's needed and either using the old counter flashing over that's on it or replacing the counter flashing that's on it. And it is white aluminum on there right now. And it's cut into the brick. That's why I want to leave that cut into the brick like it is.
Is there any pointing necessary on the chimneys? Are they?
Not that I've seen.
Excuse me, sir. John McGeehan here, the owner. We did some pointing, both chimneys, I'd say about 5 years ago. We pointed. Yeah. And painted. And pointed and painted.
All right, if there's no other questions here, is anyone prepared to make a motion?
I move that we recommend a certificate of appropriateness for the submission at 375 13th Avenue to install GAF slate line shingles in antique slate or equal with flashings replaced in kind as necessary with closed valleys as described by the contractor, lined over the existing metal with ice and water dam. And the guttering, built-in box gutters relined with an EDPM product, 4500
Yeah,
reinforced.
it's reinforced.
I think that covers it.
Okay, any seconds on it?
Second.
Okay, all right, let's put it to a vote. Up. Oh, it was
Roger.
Roger. Yeah, okay, and we'll put it to a vote. Craig Evans,
Aye.
Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mike Simons.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, and thank you for your efforts. And
Yeah, this is the product that's going on the slate line.
yeah, and we're very familiar
Yeah, I
with it.
know
This
it's
is,
everywhere.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you
Okay,
too,
thank
Mr.
you.
Medina.
Have a good night.
Hey, guys.
We are now up to our next agenda item is 1 East 4th Street.
What do you got there?
Is that, am I looking at the wrong one?
You're looking at the wrong agenda.
Oh, I am sorry. So it's 312 East 4th Street.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't even know where you got that from.
Yeah, I must have been carrying this around from May. Okay. Yeah. So if 312 East 4th Street
Come on up.
looks like you're here, come on up.
This is holy.
They both look almost entirely the same, except one's got my notes all over it. Well, welcome in. If
Thank you
could-
very much. I'm Father Andrew Geringer for the pastor of Holy Infancy Church, 312 East 4th Street. But these guys are going to be talking mostly for me, so save a lot of time for you guys.
Joe McCarthy. I'm business manager with Holy Infancy Church.
Okay. And my name's Joseph Sedler with Sedler Design. We're doing the architectural design.
Okay.
And then,
Maher Abdullah, civil engineer.
okay.
Well, welcome, gentlemen.
This church structure is a detached 3-bay stone masonry institutional building with a steep gable roof and a cross gable transept. Each bay includes an entrance portal with pointed Gothic arch and upper level windows, also with pointed Gothic arches. The larger central bay with north-facing rose window extends up to become the church bell tower. Originally called St. Michael's Roman Catholic Church, it was constructed circa 1865. It was later expanded and modified in 1886 to become Holy Infancy Roman Catholic Church. The church is Gothic Revival in style. The applicant proposes to demolish. I'm intentionally using the word demolish. The agenda says remove, but we use vocabulary demolish because of permitting issues. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing stone masonry and retaining wall, construct an ADA compliant ramp, modify a window to accommodate an accessible entrance, and regrade and landscape all the affected areas. So it seems pretty straightforward at first glance, but there are a lot of moving parts on this. So I have several standards from the Secretary of Interior that I referenced from my citation. Number 2 states the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alterations of features, spaces, and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. Secretary of Interior standard number 3, each property will be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or elements from other historic properties, will not be undertaken. Secretary of Interior standard number 9 we had in the previous project, but I'm going to quote it again just because it's applied differently to this project. New additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy the historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize a property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, as well as massing to protect the integrity of the historic property and its environment. And then I also included Secretariat Standard number 10. New additions or adjacent or related new construction will not be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the form and integrity of the historic property and its environment will be unimpaired. And then also the ordinance that Mr. Later read at the beginning of tonight's meeting. So the certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to construct a new ADA compliant ramp along the east facade of the church to be constructed of concrete block with stone veneer to match the existing church facade. And then somewhere there's a comment potentially salvaged from the adjacent stone wall that's being proposed for demolition. It will have a poured concrete ramp surface along with iron railings and posts. This new double back ramp with an interim landing measures approximately 39 feet long. I was not able to determine the width dimension. This packet is more, I think, for maybe zoning review or something.
Okay.
It has not been customized for our purposes, so it takes a lot of time to find certain things, and I never could find the width dimension of the overall ramp. The height of the ramp, excluding the handrail, is 4 feet 9 inches from existing grade and coordinates with the main floor level. So that's the finished floor level of the entry that they're running the ramp up to. According to the application, the construction of the new ramp will necessitate the demolition, they say removal, of the existing historic stone wall at the front and side of the adjacent rectory structure, along with the abandoned coal bins within the area between both structures. So I can't recall exactly. There's very little information about the stone wall in reference to pictures. There are a couple of pictures. We have a series of these kind of walls throughout the district. The claim is that the wall is one, I believe, in the way to be able to construct the ramp, and two, is in a condition not to be repaired, but I'll let them speak to that. The proposed ramp also necessitates modifications to the existing Gothic arch window with leaded glass details in order to accommodate the new door entrance on the side. The proposed ramp, in my opinion, is inappropriate as presented because it violates those various Secretary of Interior standards I mentioned previously. For example, the removal of the historic wall along the front and the side of the rectory violates Interior Standard number 2, removal of distinctive materials and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. I did not include the Secretary of Interior standards that relate to repairing existing and replacing in kind because they're not talking about retaining the wall. If it does come to that, there are other Secretary of Interior standards that would relate also to what they should be doing if the wall is to be retained. As a reminder, these walls form streetscapes. We have them throughout the district, and the walls are considered just as important as buildings because they help delineate the property from the sidewalk. And so I'm calling special attention to that because it's not immediately obvious, but that is the plan, to remove everything except for the steps leading up to the rectory, regrading the whole front of the property, and removing those sections of the stone wall, which again is in violation of those two Secretary of Interior standards. Also, we don't look positively on replacing historic elements onto new construction because it gives a false impression that that's historic. And again, that's Secretary of Interior standard number 3. In my opinion, the ramp itself violates Secretary of Interior standards number 9. Again, there's not much detail here. It's very possible they can clarify how they might do this, but based on the proposal of concrete ramp, it's hard for me to understand how that in the future could theoretically be removed without compromising the historic building fabric of the church. So that would be in violation 10 of the Secretary of Interior standards. If removed, the essential form and integrity of the building should not be impaired. The relevant design guidelines for the district do consider iron railing appropriate. They're proposing iron railing. Normally, we would be receiving larger kind of details of those, so I would ask, perhaps if this goes to another discussion, that we request larger scale and more detailed drawings of the handrail assembly, including such things we're going to need in the resolution, ultimately, the dimensions of the posts, the balusters. It's going to have some kind of a profile at the top. We don't know how they're going to finish it, so all those kind of things that we would need as a district to be able to integrate into the resolution. Also, it calls itself an ADA compliant ramp, but I don't see the typical hardware associated with ADA ramps. So if they're coming back with future drawings, I'll request that they also include everything associated with making this ADA compliant, because even though we can't vote against it, it needs to be part of the approved set that goes to City Council and ultimately to the building inspector. That would typically include a handrail at a specific height. That handrail, at least under current ADA laws, would extend out beyond the ramp and also do something at the top of the ramp. Again, it's very little detail about the ramp itself, so it's a little hard to know. But those things really do need to be included in what we're looking at, even though they're more ADA compliant than historic. We need a lot of dimensions. I mentioned there's this one dimension. That's the only dimension, and then the height dimension of the handrail assembly. We really should integrate all kinds of dimensions in the resolution if it goes to that. In summary, in my opinion, an appropriate design solution for a new ADA compliant ramp would avoid the demolition of the historic stone wall at the front of and the side of the rectory. It should differentiate itself from the historic church structure, but be compatible with materials, features, size, scale, and proportion and massing, and also be constructed in such a manner that when removed, or if removed, the form and integrity of the church itself and the environment remains unimpaired. Finally, should HCC consider the ramp as proposed appropriate, we need a lot more information about modifications to the leaded glass window and how that's going to be a new entrance. There is a graphic indication that the sill would be raised to allow for the door opening, but there's no indication of what kind of material the door is going to be. I don't have any dimensions on the door. There's not a detail to explain how when you cut a leaded window at a certain place, how that actually works. And those are things that are very important for this commission. So it's mentioned verbally and it's depicted graphically as a front-on elevation, but there really are no details to explain how that's going to be successfully done. And similar, it needs to be done in such a way if in the future the ramp is removed, someone can reestablish that window to become a window. And I just don't see what they're putting forth that those kind of thoughts are being considered. Maybe they are, maybe there's a process of retaining and salvaging, storing away those kind of elements, et cetera, but I couldn't find any reference to that in the proposal.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, perhaps you could, explain the project to us better. And I guess one thing I'm wondering is, in addition to just responding to all of Jeffrey's comments, I'm not clear on what is driving removing the stone retaining wall at the front of the site.
As we looked, the current church was built 1882.
Mhm.
It was started. And the front, we've looked at handicapped access for years. And parishioners have also expressed concerns. It is not an easy church to get into. From the front of the church, you have steps in the front leading into a foyer, and then you have another set of steps that they
Okay.
have to go. So looking at handicapped access, we said you'd have a long list of things would be violating in order to redo the front to provide reasonable handicapped access.
Mhm.
And especially because the difference between the sidewalk elevation in the front to the sanctuary elevation is significant. We then looked at putting a handicapped access on the side of the church. And there's a different requirement as far as how far from grade to entry into the church. So narrowed down the work. It also would avoid changing anything in the front.
Mhm.
We looked, and the impetus was handicapped access. As we then do that, the wall, which we refer to, that is parallel to the church, is really, it would be like 1 foot between the wall and the ramp. We need access to the side of the church. We need access for high lift. Currently, there's a driveway there. We have contractors who get in with a lift, but they're limited in what they can do with the lift because you don't have maneuverability.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like the lift is a separate thing, right?
We looked, if we do that, the ramp on the side of the church,
Okay,
we then block off access to the side of the church for maintenance of the roof. We would not be able to get in to maintain the roof. Removing the wall, which is failing,
Mhm.
removing the wall would end up enable us to regrade that area so we can then get in with a lift. Removing the wall also addresses another issue we have, which is long existing coal bins that extend from inside the rectory to the outside edge of the wall that would have to be filled in. And those currently leak, collects water, there's stagnant water in them. So look to eliminate the coal bins, regrade, and that becomes area where a lift, we can access the roof of the church for repairs. Look, I think it's shown on the plans where the,
yeah, I
Coal
thought I
bins are.
saw the coal bins called out. That's my,
And then there's the one spot where the bucket truck is depicted on the drawing too, on A1, Gary.
okay, so the bucket truck, in other words, you're just trying to show how you're giving access to it. It's not
Yeah.
something that's always parked there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
show people, that's the reason we're looking at things there. We
okay,
would retain at the 4th Street, there is a drive, basically a driveway. The curb is changed. We would retain that. And that'd be the way vehicles would get in to do work in that area. The curb,
okay, so if I'm to understand correctly, well, because you're installing this ramp here, somehow you have to provide access for that bucket truck, so regrading this area gives you that access.
that's correct. Yep,
Okay, thank you. All right,
it cascades.
okay,
It cascades. And regrading, it eliminates really the coal bins that are there that are worthless and really collect stagnant water.
Yeah.
So it corrects
okay,
some issues we have.
Hmm.
And the wall is deteriorating.
yeah,
It's been damaged. It's been damaged partially with vehicles that squeeze into that space, and
mhm,
you try to turn a lift, the lift truck, and boom, it hits the wall. So, one,
hmm,
going with the ramp, it then means the wall we have to remove there. The wall also is failing in the front of the rectory. So we look, with that, we then look to regrade the area between the rectory and the church, and then follow through and regrade the front of the rectory. So it becomes a cohesive view of the rectory and the church. And the access to the sanctuary, the church, if you go and look on the side, the only way you can get access is with modifying one of the windows. You can't put it in between the windows. There's pilasters there. So that becomes a logical spot to have an entrance into the sanctuary of the church.
well, I
And
could,
we admit that the plans which are submitted don't have all the details.
Mhm.
But we're looking, these are the concepts we're looking at. And before we generate all the details, will we have approvals? Or
sure,
we generate the complete set of construction drawings to do it? We don't want it shut down then.
sure. Well, that stone retaining wall, I would say that is a real, defining element. And it's, yeah, I agree. It looks like it badly needs some maintenance. I guess one question, well, first of all, let me say this. I could only imagine the amount of work and discussion and that you must have had to come to this design solution. And I know how difficult it must be to, even, the expense that must go into maintaining that wall there.
Yes.
So, all I can say is I wish there was a way you could do this project without removing that retaining wall.
Yeah. We don't see a way to do it.
Right.
And maintain the ability to maintain the church.
Mhm.
The church does have a slate roof, and it's, I don't know, but it's a steep slate roof. And the alternative, without getting in there with years ago, there were people who could work on the roof, repair the slate, and they would use chicken ladder.
Mhm.
They would crawl on the roof. No longer, they won't do it anymore.
Sure.
A lift, and they also say, well, we can erect scaffolding to get up and replace shingles on the roof. If you can't get in with the lift, well, being honest, that's becomes horrendously expensive.
Um, The renderings over there, is that something you want us to look at?
Yeah, this is something that you didn't have before, but.
Okay.
Yeah, I can show that. This is a quick rendering that Al had created,
Okay.
showing the current conditions of the
Okay.
church, and then the regrading.
Okay.
Okay, and the same thing, this is, everything we've submitted is more conceptual.
Okay.
Things like ADA accessibility guidelines
Okay.
and details on how we're going to reconstruct the window. That's all would be
Hmm.
included in the application. But this is conceptually, that's what we're looking to do. So we're taking that area,
Mhm.
grading it flat, giving the accessibility around the church, and then solving the problem with handicap accessibility. So.
Yeah, so really, this is, mostly to show us the impact of removing that wall, right? If that ramp wasn't there, then you would have the access for the bucket truck, right?
We have limited access for a high lift,
Okay.
They-
But you would have access.
and we have had access, yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't get it
But
all
it-
the way up
it
on the
does-
top of the roof because they can't angle it in a proper way
Oh,
to get
okay.
up to the top. They can only get to the very edge from that
Okay.
side.
They end up, if you think of the high lift, the bucket truck,
Mhm.
it has a base, then it pivots. It can pivot, and then you have the arm. You
Okay.
can't pivot. It's impossible to pivot, and that's caused damage at times to the wall.
Okay.
And without pivoting, you can't get up to the high points of the roof.
So I feel I need to ask this, but have you, the front of the church, I guess faces north, right?
Yes,
Okay. I'm just guessing that the rear of the church is at a higher elevation and maybe that would be easier to make accessible?
well, currently, and I'm not, there is a ramp in the rear.
Okay.
No adjective on that. There's a ramp in the rear. You put in years and years ago. that gives access into the sacristy.
Okay.
But then from the sacristy, if someone gets into the sacristy in a wheelchair, that's as far as they can go, because moving out of the sacristy, you then pass the altar, and it's not, you don't have the space. You don't have the space to do it. And if you did, you would then be at a different elevation than the sanctuary floor.
Okay,
There's actually, yeah,
It's
where
like three
people sit.
steps down, there's another three, like different levels. There's a step down to one level and then
Mhm.
another 2 steps down to the next level to where the people generally sit, you know?
and so you feel that that option, because of all the steps, is not feasible?
It's not
Because
feasible.
it affects the actual sanctuary, which
Okay.
is something I'm not gonna rearrange, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like,
Okay,
it's not the place the people to come in, like say like mass is going on, they can't come through that
Okay.
area when the action is happening. You see what I'm saying? Whereas
Sure.
if they're coming from the back, it's not breaking the flow of the actual liturgical service as they're happening.
Was there any discussion of using some sort of mechanical lift and finding a location to do that as opposed to a ramp?
I guess we had talked about that.
Yeah, we had talked about it, and that's where if I look at the four sides of the church, the rectangle. The side we looked at is the east side.
Mhm.
The front is north, and the front, which is the normal entrance, has steps outside, varying number of steps because the elevation changes. You then get inside, and then you have an additional set of steps that have to be done. And we looked, it would really take, it wouldn't, just wouldn't fit in there. It becomes cumbersome. And really, the rear, to come in from the rear, you're then basically blocked by the altars. You have the main altar, you have the two side altars, and there's not space between them to go. And also, from I guess as I look, my reading, you shouldn't be calling attention to the handicapped person in order to get into the space. That'd be, you're embarrassing them.
yeah,
So our thought was you have to have it toward the front so that they can come in, handicapped people can come in, and you're not calling attention to them. And we do have good number of elderly people who have limitations. And they still come to church. But recently, at one funeral, I know a person came and was in a wheelchair, but friends or family
They pick
carried her up the first set of steps, and
on
then
the wheelchair.
on the wheelchair, carried her up the second set. Long term, I'd say the church will lose parishioners.
And then even with the mechanical lift, then it's where to place it so you can actually make the entry into the building. That's very limited, which is why we chose one of the windows. It's a natural opening. It's got the header in place. Structurally, it works, but we're very limited because on the that'd be the west side of the church. I mean, that's just sidewalk and there's not much room. The back of the church is pretty much taken care of, and then the front has all its own issues with the different elevations. There's a significant difference between the elevation of the sidewalk and the church floor as opposed to the side of the building in the church.
In fact, as I guess you mentioned, there has been considerable dialogue in order to get to this point.
I can imagine.
It wasn't easy.
Jeff, can you clarify something for us, though? So I mean, I certainly understand the the Secretary of Interior standards you were quoting from. I guess the part I'm stuck on is I think you were saying that the ramp should be constructed in a way that it could be removed at a future date, which to me implies then that it would be built from a contrasting material, and that almost seems to make me think that if they came back to us with like a prefabricated aluminum ramp, would you say that meets more the intent of the Secretary of Interior standards than constructing something that looks like it's a part of the building?
That's my understanding of the Secretary of Interior standards. One, it differentiates itself so that there's no mistake what's historic and what's not.
Okay,
And two, precedent is given to the historic structure. So I don't have enough detail from what they're providing, and I respect the fact they haven't gone into detail. But the description of concrete block with poured in place concrete tells me that once that's done, it's impossible to remove
Right.
that without damaging the church.
right.
I was hoping they would describe how they would do that, and I haven't heard that yet. Maybe they would in a series of more defined drawings.
Right.
I cannot tell you right now if a steel structure would be acceptable. We would have to see that. I don't design for them. I can only assess
Okay.
what they put forth.
Well,
If I can address
Sure.
that, the ramp, if it's say poured block with a stone veneer, that's independent of the church. It's not like it's something that's being integrated into the church. That very well in the future could be demolished, removed, and it would have no impact on the church, on the existing structure of the church.
well, it sounds like you might have an opportunity here though, too, because, if what I'm understanding from Jeffrey is correct, might be a lot more cost effective for you to do like a prefabricated aluminum ramp. But I want to make a trade. Here's my trade. If you go in that direction, can you at least maintain as much of the existing stone walls in front of the rectory as possible? And, maybe if you need to modify a small section to create better access for the bucket loader, I could see that. How's that sound?
I don't think we have the room.
I don't,
I mean, you're just because of the length of the ramp and the fact that it has to be a switchback, we're going to end up 8 feet wide. We don't really have,
I mean,
the width between the wall and the church wall is maybe 9 to 10 feet. And we're going to have a ramp that's 8 feet wide. So whether it's a prefab ramp or one that's constructed in place, we're still going to be in those same dimensions.
well, let me clarify what I mean. So, right now, it looks like you're showing all of this and all of this to be demolished.
It would be the northern side, which is the front of the rectory.
All along
So,
Fourth Street.
so
Along Fourth Street.
right.
on Fourth.
So all I'm trying to say is, can we just keep what's along 4th Street and then do all your grading in here? Because it looks like you got plenty of area to grade and create that access for the bucket truck.
So we're still, we're going to be repairing that front.
You'd be saying we have to repair the front wall.
That's correct, sir.
That's what you're,
Yeah.
We have reviewed similar projects that dealt with walls on Fourth Street and not granted any certificate of appropriateness recommendation based largely on the walls. So we have precedent in the way we have typically looked at this. And it's not that we're not understanding of your problem, because we really are. But it's, as Gary is describing, something that's really quite important in terms of the visuals of the neighborhood. And so it is appropriate that we start out with concept drawings and have discussion rather than you have, as you said, a whole set of working drawings and then we run into problems. And I don't feel that that we have resolved the possibilities here yet. We're exploring them, but I don't think we've resolved them. I don't see a problem with the prefab ramp taking up 8 feet of space, because any ramp is going to take up 8 feet of space. But the prefab ramp could be removed or set aside, albeit a little bit difficult, but set aside to provide the access for roofing work.
That's true too.
I mean, if it can be assembled, it can be disassembled.
Yeah, I imagine it might be a little bit of
On a
work. to
yearly
it.
basis,
Is it yearly?
shingle, the
Yes.
slates,
Mhm.
or even if that every other year. I mean, we just had a situation where we had branches from a tree were hit on the thing.
Okay, these are things that we don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
I certainly respect the fact that you have an historic roof and it needs attention.
Yeah, and
Like-
the roof currently, it's basically the original roof with
A lot of maintenance.
a lot of maintenance over the years. And the cost, to replace the roof,
Yeah,
it,
substantial,
it,
to say the
more than,
least.
more than substantial.
I can say that as a pastor here, I came here 8 years ago, and there's a lot of deferred maintenance.
I'm
Maintenance.
sure.
And we've been struggling,
Yeah.
like, to try and keep the things that we painted, you know what I mean? Just that existing, that was $100,000 right there. That took 2 years for us to fundraise.
Yeah.
We fixed our bell, because it was something that the people wanted. We fundraised again for that. This is another fundraiser we've been saving up for and to
Mhm.
try it because
Mhm.
people are asking for it from
Yeah.
the community, like handicap accessibility. It's on all levels, the English, Spanish, Portuguese, they're all getting older,
Sure.
and it's getting harder to get them into church, So I get what you're saying. I could say we could definitely, I guess, in our perspective, and reminded in terms of as I'm hearing this now about trying to reuse materials and make it look like it's part of the structure. I understand what that said, and I do remember hearing that now before in another conversation. That is not necessarily, it's not historical. It's making something new that looks like, and I think that
Mhm.
that makes sense. So a prefab, but I still don't see how, in my perspective anyway, how putting that would enable us to be able to get at the work on a regular basis. Yeah.
Well,
There are cost constraints.
here's all I'm trying to suggest. I'm just trying to suggest to maintain as much of the wall, at least along East 4th Street, as possible. From looking at your site plan here, it looks like if you removed, as you're proposing, the retaining wall that's between the rectory and the church, it looks like you have a pretty, just based on the size of the bucket truck, it looks like you'd have some area to get over the curb and still get up onto the grassy area and do your ramp. And so I guess my thinking is this: if Jeffrey's saying that we could use a prefab ramp, then you're not messing as much with the existing church, tying it in. You're not having to pour foundations. You're going to have a less expensive ramp, and you could put that money into restoring that stone wall. Does that make sense?
So would you be receptive to, if the integrity of the wall along 4th Street was maintained, we had the same opening, but then beyond that, the site there was modified
Mhm.
to be regraded, repaired, flattened out, whatever had to be done.
Yeah,
So that portion of the wall would be removed. That
Yeah.
would be more acceptable.
I think so.
I would concur.
Okay.
I would look though that I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Looking at the site, for a vehicle to get in,
Mhm.
if we construct the ramp, for a vehicle to get in then,
Mhm.
between the ramp and the Fourth Street wall, there will have to be regrading. The grade would have to be lowered for
Okay.
a portion, like to turn,
Understood.
which, being honest, I think it would look like hell.
Well,
It just
um,
won't look good. It'd be a wall and then the grade goes down from the wall because you have to have the room to get the vehicle by.
But you know, you seem like a really good civil engineer, and I bet you'll find a way to make it work.
I'm not a civil engineer.
Oh.
Al's the civil
Oh,
engineer.
you're the civil. I'm sorry.
he's
Oh,
the
you're
boy.
the manager. I'm sorry. I messed up everyone's
Yeah.
roles.
We discussed that sometime early, but the things here, we are looking also to the view, like how does it, if we cut this wall, this part, it would be not like centered, and the view will be unbalanced in front of the building itself.
Okay.
So this is the reason we offer like, remove the whole wall together, recreate everything, make it asymmetrical,
Hmm.
and then we can come to the building itself.
Okay.
We can provide more three-dimension picture from other views.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily. I mean, it's great to see the renderings and all that. I think this is something that you know, maybe do a quick plan study and just show us how much is you could keep and still make your grading work. You know, and again, I appreciate, you know, I know there must have been a ton of conversation and discussion on this, but I think you see where we're coming from. We want to find a way to, you know, keep that retaining wall, and we haven't even talked yet about the new door you're creating and the modifying the sill and all that yet. But, you know, I feel we're kind of on the way to somewhat of a solution.
See, if I look, the church itself is what, about 140 some years old.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 140 some years old. The ramp we talked about, you know, I would look, that's going to be there 100 years from now. The church is there, it's going to stay there.
Mhm.
The ramp would be there 100 years from now. To me, the metal ramp would have, what isn't going to last 100 years. It's going to have to be replaced. So, you know, from a
Mhm.
life cycle cost analysis, I would venture to say that most probably the concrete ramp has a lower cost for us long term.
Hmm.
And the church was built at it, that it has massive walls.
Mhm.
It's stood, it's bared, it's 140 years well. And as we make changes, I can't foresee why you would want to remove the ramp once it's in. That becomes an integral part of the church, an integral way parishioners go into the church.
Okay.
It's done. No one would be saying, take the ramp out.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
it should be done permanently,
All right.
not a temporary thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the things we'd mentioned, I had mentioned to these guys that I was at the Holy Ghost on Sunday, which is 1906, old church, generally same area. They have a large concrete ramp, metal railing on the right-hand side, and that must have been used by 60 or 70 people that day. So, and it's a permanent structure. It's really
And
become,
there's
now
only-
that ramp, I don't know
There's
how old
only
it is.
one problem with that ramp at Holy Ghost.
What's that?
Cannot wheel a casket around the turn at the landing.
All the people using it on Sunday were alive, so.
Thank God. Hopefully it'll stay that way.
The last time you go in, you can't ride.
Oh. I understand.
You know, and
So they didn't factor that in with the turning radius.
we've tried it with cardboard molds and, you know,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. You can't do it. But And my thinking on the wall in the front is that I'm not ready to say it's got to go. I'm just, it may end up being the case, but
Well, that having been said, I'd like to make a motion for 312 East 4th Street. I feel that at this point, we should table the discussion, but we would like you to come back with a scheme that shows how you could maintain the wall, the existing stone wall at the rectory on East 4th Street. But we're willing to modify it and allow grading between the rectory and the church to provide the access for the bucket truck. And, I mean, my personal feeling is that, if you feel you just want that more solid looking ramp, to serve your accessibility function, I think, I understand that, and, I'd be willing to accept that. So I think, when you come back to us, I mostly would like to see how you could solution that maintains that 4th Street stone wall, and, perhaps some more detail on, how you're going to modify the stained glass window and the sill you're raising. And, I think Jeffrey might have been asking about the entrance door too. So if I could, if that motion to table sounds good.
second,
Okay, we have a second.
I just want,
Yeah.
I want to add one thing. When you come back to, can we get some dimensions on the ramps, like
Yes.
widths and landings and stuff like that? Just so
Oh,
it's-
right, thank you. I thought maybe I saw something on one of the other plan drawings, but I'm not sure.
there's some stuff, but not a lot. Like you see on this last
Okay.
one, it has like,
And I'll tell you, the only other thing that confused me was on drawing A2. What I would have liked to have seen was an elevation of the existing conditions. But, oh, okay, yeah, because you have a drawing that says, they all say ramp elevation, but the one in the middle that says ramp elevation, okay, I guess you're just trying to show the height of the sill for the door.
Yeah, it to include everything on one
Okay,
elevation, that would have been confusing.
okay, all right, I got you.
There it is, okay.
So I have a second on my motion. We'll put it to a vote. Craig Evans,
to table.
to table.
Aye.
Roger Hudak, I vote aye, and Mike Simons.
Aye.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
On the wall, does the wall have to be, I've had a mason out there, and
Okay,
he said, oh, he can patch it.
okay.
He can, do the joints and so forth. He said, but you're not going to correct the problems.
And what did he say were the problems?
Water, he looks, you really, to do the wall,
Mhm.
it'd be looking, basically taking it apart and putting it back
Rebuilding
together.
it.
Does it have to be the same height? And if you do that, does it have to be the same height? Or is there variation in height that
That's an interesting thought, Gary.
Hmm?
That's an interesting thought. The dress is accommodating some grading.
Oh, okay.
that would enable some
That
grading,
would open up the possibility of some grading,
but still having a wall.
but still have the
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, the stone caps on it, and
They're bad.
Yeah.
They're falling apart. the
Yeah, I
caps.
mean, those are all kind of character defining details. So I guess I would hope that, some of it could be repaired or replaced. But yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, maybe if it helps you with the grading, as Craig is suggesting, maybe there's a solution there.
if to do something with the wall, you do have to take it apart, put it back together. Does the wall need a railing?
Here's what I'm going to say. Put together a plan, and that's what we'll talk about at the next meeting. And, you know, if you have a mason you've been talking to, bring them along. I'll even throw this out there. You know, if it's something where you'd like us to meet with you on site, you know, I think we could arrange that too.
Yeah, because a lot of it's visual.
As important as this is to you and your parishioners, it's an important aspect of our community. And so, you know, we have to share that responsibility with you. So we're very much willing to come out and
Okay.
look at the site.
But I always like to end on a positive note, and I think it's a great project, and I think we'll get you there.
Eventually.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Approval of the minutes.
Yeah, do we have any approval of the minutes from last time?
I recommend, I move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, any seconds on that?
Second.
Okay, any new business?
Not at this time. I was
Okay.
just thinking of maybe if, for next year, maybe if we wanted to entertain, maybe moving these meetings up to start at 5.
Oh, okay, would that help everyone here, or,
Well, that's what time we do harm,
okay?
and it usually just, it's just an idea.
I think we used to start at 7.
Yeah.
And you know, for.
6 has been helpful. I don't know that five might be.
Was that the
I think the only thing you run the risk of is some of our applicants
Yeah,
are still at their jobs at 5
And the
o'clock.
parking situation out here.
Yeah. We don't run into the applicants not making any of the hard meetings pretty on a regular basis. So
Okay.
we don't have that problem there. it's just a suggestion.
yeah,
I mean, we could wait till we get our full
Yeah.
yeah.
complement here till,
I'm
Well,
sure.
it's we have to be careful that we maintain the ability to get a quorum.
correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I just floated it out there.
Yeah.
Food
I
for
mean, I
thought.
know that Desiree, for example, works pretty close right up to 5 o'clock typically. And,
Yeah.
you know,
It would be
even though
good
she's
to-
self-employed,
Yeah,
she still has to work. You know what that's like, Gary.
I do. I know I'm always just trying to get one last thing in before I head out the door too. So I don't know if, for me, it might not matter whether I get that one last thing in at 4:59 or, you know.
Or 5:59.
You're right. But yeah, I think we should definitely, I don't know if it's an email to her, just remember to ask her. I did try to reach out to Laura Collins and, I'm sorry, yeah.
We ask
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
to arrange a meeting with this group on site.
Just contact me.
Contact you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I know you have my email. We've emailed in the past. Yep. Okay.
Or let's say, other plans required, or
We could talk on site.
we can talk on site.
Yep.
Okay. Without the plans.
Yep.
Okay.
We could use
All
these
right.
plans to talk on site.
Okay, thank you again. I've been trying to nudge her to get Seth Cornish back involved, because I think he would join us in the meetings if, city council just got reappointments on the agenda. And so I did express that to her, and, I think she said something about the mayor getting back from, having their new baby. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed.
Okay.
Yeah. If you happen to see her and you want to nudge her too.
Yeah, I'll certainly see her tomorrow. I'll mention something. Okay.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
motion carries. I'm glad it was a weather